and everyone says, oh, glucose is essential for life. And I actually think a tiny bit is essential for life, but the excess we're putting ourselves at risk with is causing so much damage. And I actually ultimately came up with we all talk about carbs being troublesome. So I said, okay, I'm going to make an academic argument now and see what dose that is. I don't know if you've seen the talk, but do you know what I came up with? 4 grams. 1 teaspoon of glucose is enough to have a detrimental effect on your body, which is the definition of toxicity. When something has a negative impact on a system, that's called toxicity. So, for example, 1 slice of bread has 5 teaspoons of glucose in it. 1 can of Coca-Cola is 36. So literally at 1 teaspoon, we are seeing a detrimental effect on the system of glucose, even though everyone tells. And so, my perspective is that when you eat glucose, the body does everything in its capacity to get it out of the bloodstream, which sort of makes sense because in nature, whenever we're able to get it, which was seasonally available fruit, that's probably it. Lactating milk, as infants, but seasonally available fruit was the time of plenty, and it was the time that our bodies ate all this sugar and carbs to store it as fat for winter hibernation. And so we are just animals. So people don't like it, the fact when I say, well, look, we're just animals. But our biochemistry is the same. All animal life actually survives on the thing called the Krebs cycle, which is where nutrients or food, carbohydrate, protein, and fat is turned into acetyl-CoA, so we generate ATP, adenosine triphosphate. It is the mechanism of life. The Krebs cycle, you can't argue with it. And it doesn't matter if you're a bird or a rabbit or a bear or a human, we're all using the same Krebs cycle. So each animal species develops different pathways to actually work that efficiently. And our pathway is actually, our preferred fuel state is actually protein and fats, not carbohydrate. We actually get carbs out of the bloodstream as soon as possible. Glucose gets distributed under the effect of insulin, and fructose gets taken straight out in the liver, metabolized away. We don't want that stuff in the bloodstream.
So, sorry to interrupt, but you, in one of your talks, you had this great analogy about a nut allergy and how, like, no one thinks it's a good idea to give someone with a nut allergy nuts and then, stick them with an EpiPen every time they have a reaction, and it's kind of the same with sugar, right?
Well, type 2 diabetes, if you want a better term, excuse the pun, the low-hanging fruit in this topic is type 2 diabetes. It literally is. So that's the extreme situation where the system has exhausted all of its mechanisms for getting rid of glucose out of the bloodstream, whether it's type 1, type 2. So when you eat glucose, then you actually got to take medicine to actually get it out of the bloodstream. So there's medications which push it into the tissue. There's medications which stop you absorbing it. There's medications which actually make you pee it out more through the kidneys. And there's some that bind it in the bowel. So all of those medications have complications and side effects. And so the simplest thing is, if you don't eat the carbohydrate, you don't need to have the medication. And one of those things about in that talk, and I go through it in some length, is there is not a single biochemical pathway in the body that requires us to ingest glucose. We need to have a balanced diet which contains essential proteins, essential fats, micronutrients, and vitamins, but there is not a single requirement for glucose nor fructose. Bearing in mind, even if you're a carnivore, you're still going to get a tiny little bit of glucose, of carbohydrate. But if we're coming down to biochemistry, there is not a single requirement. So whenever that the figure of 130 grams of glucose, carbohydrate per day, is just literally plucked out of the air. There was no scientific basis behind it. And so therefore I'm controversial, because I say, well, actually there's zero requirement. But it's no longer me alone. But when I started talking about this, then I was clearly the nutter from Tasmania. And but luckily, just very luckily, I'm actually an orthopedic surgeon. So orthopedic surgeons are known for their arrogance. So if on this topic, I knew I was right. I knew the health benefits for myself. I started learning more about the biochemistry. Most importantly, I could see the health benefits for my family and my patients. And so I've been fortunate enough to help other colleagues in different countries. I'm helping someone in an Asian country at the moment. I won't mention his name because we're in the midst of a bit of a battle. It's just amazing how much trouble you're getting into for actually helping your patients. My example, I got reported to the medical board 3 times by different dietitians. But one of the occasions, one of the claims against me that I'd inappropriately reversed someone's type 2 diabetes on national TV.